These are the games that I absolutely love when it comes to sports. It's exciting. It's exciting to watch your team travel cross country and to go up against a solid football team. This is what Jim Harbaugh's team. They are a solid, well-rounded team. And this is a litmus test. This is a measuring stick, but it's exciting because these are the kind of games that are prove it games. These are the kind of games that are like, all right, what are you all about? What type of football team are you? That's what type of game this is. In year one, Jim Harbaugh's team has proven to be tough as nails. They've got the top scoring defense, giving up less than 16 points a game, and they're a team with the third best turnover margin at plus 11. Justin Herbert does not turn the football over. He's only thrown one interception this year. When you go back and you look at those statistics, you're like, that can't be right. It is. It is. The dude is taking care of the football. Now, he is banged up. He missed practice pretty much all week until yesterday when he was out there with his team, all right, dealing with a sprained ankle, dealing also with a little bit of a hip injury. But I am so excited for this game because, listen, you're supposed to beat the teams that the Buccaneers have just beaten. The last three teams, not great. When you're playing the Panthers, you're playing the Giants, you're playing the Raiders, hey, it is what it is. You have to beat those. Now, I'm not taking anything away from those victories because in order for you to be a good football team, you have to win the games you're supposed to win, even if they're not all Picassos. But this is a matchup right here when you're going against this Chargers team, the way that they're built, the way that they play football. If you go cross country 425 on Sunday and you come out of there with a win, that's one of those plant your flag in the ground type games of we're here, this division is ours, we're heading to the playoffs. If you lose this game, does anybody kind of freak out and say this team's a fraud? I don't think they're going to go that far on that end of the spectrum. But again, this is a prove it type game. This is a what type of football team are you type game. Because one thing that we do know about Jim Harbaugh, whether it was his time at Stanford, whether it was his time in the NFL with San Francisco, whether it was back at Michigan, especially last year's national championship team, and this year's team with the Los Angeles Chargers, this guy understands that the games at any level are won and lost in the trenches. They could have gone out and got a big skill guy with his first round pick. No, he gets Joe Alt at Notre Dame. He knows how important that defensive line is. He knows how important that pass rush is. Oh, yeah, number one in sacks in the National Football League, right? When you look at this team, they get it from everywhere. Everywhere. It doesn't matter who's out there. They are going to do whatever it takes to get to the quarterback. I'm sorry, they're not number one in the league in sacks. They're number 5 at 39. Still, doesn't take anything away. 39 sacks, and you're only trailing the Broncos, Texans, Ravens, Vikings. That's not bad at all. When I said that, I was like, wait a second, they're not first, they're 5th. But still, you look at the guys on this team that are badass. There's a litany of them. Okay. And for all the talk about what Jim Harbaugh was able to do this year in the draft and how he's able to fortify his team, go back to last year's draft. When Jim Harbaugh looked at this roster, he had to have looked at these two guys especially, and he was just licking his lips saying, those are two cornerstones of my defense. All right. And I know a lot of people going back to the 23 draft class, you'll look at Quentin Johnson, the first round wide receiver out of TCU. I get that. Okay. Skill positions. They're the divas. They're the darlings. Everybody's going to look at them. But I look at two guys. I look at number one, their second round pick, Tuli Tuipulotu, their second round pick out of USC that leads the team with 7.5 sacks. All right. And when you look at Tuli, as they affectionately call him out there, you're talking about a pass rush with Khalil Mack, with Joey Bosa, and with Bud Dupree. Those are 3 guys that have made tens of millions of dollars in the National Football League getting to the quarterback. But it's this kid, the second-year kid out of USC, that's leading the team with 7.5 sacks. He's not a big dude, but when you watch him, he is relentless. He's fantastic with his hands. He finds a way to get to the quarterback. He's relentless. And this team on defense, they work in sync. They're really one of the best teams, I think, to actually watch. They're aesthetically pleased. They play the game the right way. That's one side, right? Now, how about this linebacker, Dion Henley? The third round pick from last year out of Washington State. He's got the 6th most combined tackles in the National Football League. This guy is everywhere. And when you look at how many tackles he has, right? He's got 122 tackles. The next closest guy in his entire team is 45 tackles behind him, and that's Derwin James. Henley is all over the place. He's a tackling machine. He's the heartbeat of that defense right in the middle. And it's kind of wild to think that how important those two guys are, second-year players, when you have the aforementioned Derwin James and Bosa and Mack. Like, this is a really, really good team. And when you look at the offensive line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, those are the guys that are going to have to carry the water in this game. And when they play well, and shout out to Cody Mauch, who had a fantastic game against the Raiders, he's got to do it again. Graham Barton, the rookie center out of Duke. This is one of those games where, okay, if you want to prove that you're a legit team, as I've said before, this is a prove-it type game. The offensive line needs to be one of the best position groups for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this game. We know what you're going to get from the tackles. You know what you're getting from Wirfs. You know what you're going to get from Gedeke. Bredesen's not 100%. I would think that he was going to play, but Barton and Mauch, those are the two guys that I'm looking at in this game. If they can do the job, not just in pass protection, but running the football, that is going to be a key to the success of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday. Now, Bucky Irvin not practicing, did work on the side with the trainer. I don't think you're going to see much of Bucky practicing for the rest of the season. He's already dealt with 3 different injuries this year. He's dealt with the back, dealt with the hip, dealt with the foot/ankle or toe with something in the lower extremity there. You're not going to see much of him practicing. So what does that mean? You're going to see some Rashad White. You're going to see some Sean Tucker. I do think Bucky Irving's going to play, but regardless of who is in the backfield, regardless, you have to be strong in the trenches. That is going to be a key in this game, offensively, defensively, right? Now, I want to get to this question. Richie P, thanks for bringing in. Chargers Ed Rutgers making me ask, why can't Light hit on a DE in the draft? Is there something he's missing in his analysis? Richie, that's a great point, because you look at Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, you look at Chris Braswell, you look at Yaya Diaby, and I understand people are going to look at Yaya Diaby and say all of his numbers are up except sacks. Well, guys, that's what he's there to do. He's there to sack the quarterback. And I feel like for the last 6, probably longer than that, when it comes to the Buccaneers pass rush, there's always a caveat. There's always all right, well, it's this, but not this. At the end of the day, it's black and white. You got to rush the passer. You got to sack the passer. That's the key. You can get pressures out of the wazoo all you want. You have to get to the quarterback, and you got to get him to the ground. You got to force these guys in a second and long and third and long. You got to get to the quarterback. Pressure is only so good. You got to bring these guys down. And Richie, if you missed it, we had a conversation, a really, really good, solid, informative conversation with Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report last week, or this past Monday on the podcast. I implore you to go back and listen to it. And he spoke about the coaches. He spoke about the coaches and their lack of developing these pass rushers. Because internally, I think they do a great job. When you look at the job done by Vita Vea, when you look at the job done by Kalijah Kancey, when you even come at times and you see like CJ Brewer picked up a couple sacks in one game earlier this year, and at times you see Logan Hall get to the quarterback. It's very weird, but the outside pass rush is almost non-existent. For all those people, for all these years that are talking about, all right, well, the outside pass rushers need guys, in the middle to do their job. Well, they are doing their job, right? Or people saying that, all right, you need an internal pass rush to help the guys on the outside. Well, they're there. They're there. What's the excuse? What's the excuse for Yaya Diaby not having more sacks, or Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, or Chris Braswell? I mean, he's the second-round pick. You got to see more from these guys. And I don't put it all on the coaches, but I think they do share some of the blame. They have to shoulder some of this blame. They have to. They have to make sure that they're putting these guys in a position to succeed. And you don't think coaching makes a difference? As Scott said earlier this week, look at the offensive side of the ball. This team could not run the football at all the last 2 years, whether it's Byron Leftwich or Dave Canales. Here comes Liam Cohen with these incredible schemes, with his pre-snap motion, with these, he's pulling these guards and they're crushing these guys, and they're opening up a hole for these running backs, any of the three. Coaching has something to do with it. And you want to talk about pulling guards, you want to talk about creative plays to run the football, you're going to see that from the Chargers as well. Their offensive game plan, when you watch them, and you've seen some of this stuff before, Greg Roman's their offensive coordinator. And you saw Greg Roman in San Francisco with Kaepernick and the 49ers. You saw Greg Roman in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. So you kind of know what you're going to get from Greg Roman, right? You're going to be creative running the football. You're going to be effective in the short passing game to look to extend that defense. And this is something that the Buccaneers need to be cognizant about. Baker Mayfield, of course, and I know somebody put it here. Shout out to David Terry. Baker has to be better. No turnovers has to happen. I couldn't agree with you more, David. Couldn't agree with you more. This team, more than likely, is not going to turn the football over. That's just the way it goes. Number one in turnover margin. So for me, in order for them to be successful this week against the Los Angeles Chargers, the Buccaneers just have to get back to the basics. It's the fundamentals. It's winning the battle in the trenches, winning the turnover margin. And I think if you do that, you give yourself a really good chance to win this game.